Okay. Ooh, that's loud. All right. Before we get started, will you join me in prayer real quick? Uh, Dear Lord, thank you for this beautiful day. Thank you for this congregation, this church. Thank you for the gifts that you give us, an opportunity to come together as believers in Christ and talk about something that is very important and that we should all be addressing as a community. Please give me the right words to say. Come and bring your spirit into this room. Fill this room up with your spirit and help us learn together and grow together in Christ. In Jesus' name I pray, amen. Okay. Hi, everybody. Good morning. Or good afternoon. Well, I guess it's afternoon by 20 minutes. My name is Grant Dawson. Quick aside on how I know Zane. Hi, Zane. No, you're good. Come on up. You're going to do this with me? Let's do it. You wanted me to move that? Yes, please. Okay. Where would you like me to move it to? Just hold on to it for 8 seconds. Okay. Oh, the clicker. Yeah, that's important. I was going to say, when I needed to go to the next slide, that would have been awkward. All right. I know Zane. Believe it or not, I actually was a teacher of Zane back at turn the mic off. Back at the time it was Indiana Business College, and Zane was a student of mine and quickly became kind of a student-friend relationship. Zane's got a great heart, and we've kept in touch with each other on Facebook. And I gave this presentation at Life Church, and I'll get to a minute on why I gave the presentation. It's a church that I attend. And they posted online, and they had tagged me in it, and Zane said, hey, would you be willing to do this at a different congregation? And I said, well, shoot, I'll go to any congregation that will let me listen in, because I have a heart for this. And so what this presentation really is it's about protecting the hearts and the mind of our children and our families, specifically in the world we live in today. And I'm going to start with kind of my thesis of why I give this presentation. I've given it a couple times now and why it's important to me, and we'll go through all that. But to kind of put things in perspective here, pointing. Can you just do next slide for me? Awesome, thank you. If you can't read this, it's a little bit of an eye chart up there, I know. But who am I? So my wife Tori is in the front row. Say hi, Tori. Just wave. We have 3 kids. I live in Noblesville. I've been in Indiana most of my adult life. I'm a vice president of information technology for a software company here in town. We have offices here in Indy and here in Vancouver. I go back and forth between those 2 offices, and we do, just quick aside, we do parking software. So just as exciting as it sounds, the big cities and universities that have to park everywhere. So I've been there a long time. I've been doing technology my whole life. Before that, I worked at a campus. I both did technology for the campus, and I also taught different classes for Cisco, Microsoft, things of that nature, big technology companies. And then before that, I owned my own a consulting business, mostly in Mooresville, those areas where I did a lot of like small, I did churches, I did, dentist office, things of that nature. So I've been doing technology pretty much since I was 15, 16 years old when I opened up my own company. Now we have 3 kids. I have a 15-year-old daughter, Emma, and then my 2 sons, Ephraim and Noah. There's a theme there. And Ephraim is 10 and Noah is 9. And so being a home full of technology, obviously having a dad who's passionate about technology, what really brought this to kind of come about was about 6 or 7 months ago, my daughter, and I'll speak about her throughout this presentation, but about 6 or 7 months ago, my daughter really got into gaming, video gaming. We homeschool, but at the high school where we live, there's actually an esports gaming league there, and she was able to join even though we homeschool, and through all that kind of interactions and things of that nature, I started to kind of dig into the interactions that she was having with her peers or other people online, and I started to kind of see and peel back the onion and layers of what that means and what's out there. And I had always known, right? But I had to do my own research. And so kind of what was put onto my heart by God at that time was, if I'm having to dig in and understand how to protect my family online and make sure that we're doing the right things to raise our children how we need to raise them, especially in this new online world, if I'm having to do that in my role, being in technology my whole life, then gosh, what about these parents that maybe that's not their career, or maybe that's not what they do every day? And how do we come about that and come beside each other as believers in Christ, as a family, and say, how do we protect our young ones? How do we protect our families? And quite honestly, how do we protect ourselves? And so that was what drove me to originally give this. And so Deuteronomy 6:7 is kind of like the thesis of why I'm doing this. These commandments I give you today are to be in your hearts. Impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home, and when you lie down, when you get up. And I think if this Bible verse was written today, it would also say, oh, and when you're online, right? Because we spend so much of our lives online, right? And so James Dawson, Focus on the Family, a lot of you probably have heard of that organization. He has a quote that says, the footsteps a child follows are most likely to be the ones his parents thought they covered up. So we cannot put our heads in the sand about what's out there. And we also have a duty to make sure that we're giving our children a biblical worldview when it comes to anything about what we're facing. And that's really what we're going to talk about today. So before we start, a word of caution. I don't see any children in the room, which is good. I'm not going to say anything that's necessarily, can you flip the next slide? Or is this mine now? Okay. I'm not necessarily going to say anything that would be considered offensive, but I'm also not going to hold back any punches, all right? So we're going to talk about raw stuff that's out there today. I'm going to give it to you how you need to know it, because how many of you know that in order to be able to go and attack the enemy, you have to know your enemy, right? Okay? And so it's important for me to make sure that we don't just, as church, we sometimes tend to tiptoe around certain subjects like pornography and things of that nature. And I told Zane, I said, please let your pastor know. I'm not going to tiptoe around, but I'm also going to make sure I do it in good taste. So just a quick word of caution, and we're going to have a spiritual and guarded conversation, which is why I opened up with prayer. All right, so here's my problem statement, okay? If you've ever do anything in science, my brother's a scientist, you usually have a hypothesis and this thesis and this problem statement. So here's my problem statement for you guys at church today. Number one is, we live in a world of instant access. Our kids will never, ever have to sit at a table at a restaurant with their friends and go, man, who was in that movie? Who was that person in that show? Right? They don't have to do that anymore, right? Trivia, like, I don't know if you've ever done trivia at a restaurant or anything of that nature, but they always say, put your phones away, because we all have instant access to this information anymore. So there's never a scenario where you can't get anything you want at any given time. Our children have grown up in that world. I started to grow up in that world, right? I saw that transformation. And for those of you in the room that maybe are in the older generations, you're just kind of watching it, right, from the back seat. And you're going, whoa, I didn't have that, right? And so that is an important thing to remember. Along with that, we have instant access, but we also live in a broken world. I don't think anyone would argue this statement with me today, right? The enemy is still here, he's still present, and he still has a hold on this world. Sin is a part of this world, right? Until Christ comes back, it's something that we're going to have to deal with. And as a church, that means that we live in a broken world, and we have to address that. It's full of broken people. It's full of groups who want to actually undermine what God is trying to do in our communities. And you add to that the instant access of information, and then the speed at which technology moves. I've been doing technology my whole life. And I can tell you that about 4 or 5 years ago, I made a decision that I needed to get in management. And the reason was because there was no way I was going to keep up with these kids that were coming up behind me that I needed to hire. So I said, I need to get in one of those positions where I just hire smart people to work for me, and then I look really good. And, because there's no way I'm going to be able to keep up with it. And it's true. My kids learn about the newest fad and new technology more than I ever could keep up with it again. And it's my job. I get paid to do that, right? So you have this speed, you have instant access, and you have a broken world. Now, if you're looking at this from a missions-minded, and this isn't a missions conversation, you would go, wow, that's really cool. We can reach a lot of people for Christ using these tools. Yes, you can. But keep in mind, the enemy, how many of you know, also use those as an opportunity to attack what's important to us. Because what do we have right now in today's world? Watch the news. How many of you in here are parents of any shape or form? All of us, right? We're overwhelmed. If you're not paying attention, all right? We're busy. We care about our youth, right? We want our kids to be happy. We want them to have the nicest, coolest, neatest things when it makes sense to do so, right? And I don't think anybody in here says, I don't want my kids to be happy. Of course we want our kids to be happy. God wants his kids to be happy, right? But it's hard to keep up. And where do you draw the line, right? And so instant access, broken world, speed of technology, overwhelmed parents, and then our kids are losing their innocence at too young of an age, right? And so they're curious, they're learning, and we're giving them these tools. In most cases, in the church, I'm just being honest, the church as a whole, I'm not picking any one individual church, a lot of us are burying our heads in the sand. And we're saying, we don't understand it, it's different, it's hard, it's difficult to comprehend, it's all that technology stuff. I don't know how many times I've had a parent tell me, oh, it's just all those technology stuff, my kids just got it figured out, I don't know anything about it. You know what? You need to. Ignorance is not an excuse anymore for these situations, because guess what? Your kids are getting exposed to an enemy's using your ignorance as a way to get into your kids' life. And we're going to talk about that a little bit today, which is why I commend you for being here or listening online, wherever, because it's important to know what's out there. So, what's my conclusion? Everything is instantly available, which is a terrifying thought in a broken world where technology changes rapidly, parents are overwhelmed, and the hearts and minds of our children are at risk. Would anyone disagree with my conclusion in this room? Probably not, right? It's kind of a given thing, but when you wrap it all together, I probably scared you a little bit now, which I would argue wasn't necessarily my point, but I want you to be scared, because if you're scared, then that means you'll act. And if you act, that means you'll know and you'll learn. And so let's talk about what that looks like today, what our agenda is. First thing we're going to talk about today, pornography. Second thing we're going to talk about is chat and social media. Then we're going to get into online gaming. And then I'm going to kind of wrap everything up, and we're going to have, this is where we'll move into Q&A as well. Okay, I've given you all these things to be concerned about or to know about. Now I'm going to talk to you about practical ways you and your household can do things, whether it's through software, process, whatever it might be, in order to address some of these things to protect your family. All right, makes sense? So we're going to talk about what's out there. I'm going to talk a little bit about more detail about it, and then we're going to move into, okay, here's some things I recommend. I also handed out a handout. You don't need to look at it today. That's for you to take home. We're going to talk about everything that's on that handout. I didn't want you to leave here. Feel free to take pictures of these slides, whatever, but I also wanted you to have some of the things we talked about. So if you want to take notes on that, that's cool too, but at least has the websites that you need to go to follow up on the conversations we had. Cool? All right. Okay. So, part one, pornography. So, let's start with this. Now, I purposely did this. There's a lot of Christian material on pornography, and I thought to myself, if I show Christian material, that might show a little bit of a bias. So I went out to medical journals, okay? And I said, let's look at secular medical journals in higher institutions, which usually are more left-wing, less concerned with biblical spiritual truths. And I said, let's see what's out there today on some of the statistics on pornography. 51% of males and 32% of females said they had viewed pornography before they were 13, okay? When I was growing up, and this might be true for other people in the room, my introduction to pornography was one of our friends on the block, had a Playboy they had gotten from their dad. And the worst thing that I ever saw was a nude woman in Playboy magazine, and we hid it under our beds, and that was the extent of my adolescent pornography experience, okay? In this article on the Journal of Pediatrics, this is hardcore pornography. This is actual sex between a male and a female and a female, male and a male, whatever it might be. That is what your children are seeing before they're 13. 51%. Over half of the children out there are seeing hardcore pornography before the ages of 13, which in some cases is before the age in which a lot of us are even doing sexual education with our children, whether it's through the church or whether it's through the classroom, okay? So before you even get to your kids to talk to them about sex in a biblical worldview, they're seeing hardcore pornography on the internet in some way or form, okay? In addition to that, 85% of adolescent males, so now we're talking about 13 to 17, and 50% of females have been exposed to pornographic material after that age, all right? It's a problem. That's my point. This is not statistics that are coming from anywhere but from scientific medical journals. Okay, in addition to that, this is scary. I normally don't do this where I read out an actual quote, but I think this one's important, so I'm going to read it off of a slide. Forgive me for that. Youth primarily reported watching pornography that featured one-on-one sexual intercourse, but also reported having seen extreme pornography. Youth reported watching pornography on home computers or smartphones, and that pornography was frequently watched at their school. Youth reported watching for entertainment, for sexual stimulation, instructional purposes. Instructional purposes. Our kids are going to pornography to learn about sex. How many of you know that pornography is not real sex, right? In addition to that, and to alleviate boredom, many copy what they saw and try to produce it in their own sexual encounters. Trust me, that's not going to work. Pressure to make or imitate pornography. And then this is the one thing I want you to highlight. Parents were generally described as unsupportive of use of pornography, but under-equipped to discuss it. I don't think anybody in this room would say, I don't care if my kid looks at porn or not. That would probably, you're in the wrong place to have that conversation right now. But at the same time, a lot of us are under-equipped to understand how we have the conversation with our children, and also how we make sure that we don't actually turn it into something where we don't even know how to address it from a technology perspective or from how our children are accessing the internet, etc. So we've got this problem where it's rampant, it's out there. Your kids have probably already been exposed to it. If they've told you or not, I don't know. And now, from all the studies being shown, parents are under-equipped to deal with it, which is why we're here. Okay, so why do we care? Why is this a big deal? What's the big deal with our kids looking at pornography? Again, Secular Magazine. This is a college campus survey. How many of you know college campuses are not exactly the places of spiritual growth, okay? They came out and they said, essentially, that the use of this has actually distorted sexual encounters. And sex is a gift from God, right? Meant for when we marry and when we have a spouse. And they basically come out and said that college students have been so inundated with pornography that anymore it's distorting their actual relationships to the point which that will ultimately result in more anxiety, depression, and overall life dissatisfaction. Do our high school students need any more anxiety, depression, or overall life dissatisfaction? No, they do not, right? So as parents, we're not going to stop our kids from being exposed to pornography. But what we can do and what we should be doing is trying to put in situations where we can help our kids keep themselves accountable, keep each other accountable, and at the same time also where we can make the access of it harder and not as easy and instant and available at the speed of technology, right? And so that's what we're going to kind of talk about today. But it's important to understand that this is a war for our children's minds, their hearts, and quite honestly, for their relationships with their spouse when they get older. There's been studies that have been done that say that even in homes where the spouses have a what you consider a good sex life, right? It's a spiritual foundation. They have a great sex life. There are men who are addicted to pornography, even in those situations, right? And that leads to all sorts of medical conditions in the future. It leads to divorce. It leads to the women feeling like they're not good enough. There's so many terrible things that happen. And the real scary thing is, right, if I'm being very honest with you, whoops, I almost went down. I'm used to a stage at church where we don't have that, but that's going to be on video. Awesome. All right. The real scary thing is if I'm being honest with you, is the type of pornography that is out there today is not the same type of pornography that I grew up with, that you guys probably grew up with. Again, we'll go back to the whole Playboy magazine, right? What's out there today is degrading, and it is to a level of extremity that would never be in a normal sexual encounter between a male and a female in a normal, healthy bedroom. And here's why, right? So there's been studies done. Whenever you look at pornography, the brain releases something called dopamine. Have anybody heard dopamine before? Dopamine comes in a lot of forms. Dopamine you can get from dopamine from hearing a funny joke, from watching a funny YouTube video, from things that are not necessarily bad, right? Playing a video game, those all release that dopamine. That's the stuff that gives us that feeling of, satisfaction, excitement, all those different things. The problem is when you overdose on dopamine, then you become it just kind of shuts your brain down, right? You don't get the same level of satisfaction as you did before. It's a true addiction. And so what happens is now you have to find new ways to get dopamine. And so there's been studies done where they've actually shown the same pornographic video to a group of men for over a period of time, and then this happens, right? There's no more excitement from it, and they're registering their dopamine levels, they're registering blood pressure, all those things, and then they show a new pornographic video, and it goes like this, right? And so what's happening is their kids are putting in a situation where if by the age of 13, they're already seeing porn at a hardcore form, then by the time they get to 18 or 19, when their sex drives have just hit the skyrocket, now they're seeking out new forms of entertainment in order to get more dopamine, right? And so that puts them in a situation where the pornography industry has to keep up with that. It's no longer just cool to show a picture of a naked woman. Now I have to take it to the extreme. Now we have to have degrading porn and things of that nature. And so let me make a statement to you, all right? For anybody that says, well, porn, you're going to hear it. It's all over the news today, right? This idea that pornography is it's empowering the women. There's women who are producing porn now and things of that nature. Let me make a statement to you. All pornography is at the end of the day is sex trafficking. And if the church doesn't wake up and realize that, we're doing everybody a disfavor. Because at the end of the day, what we're doing is we're taking these women at the ages of 17 or 18, we're telling them they're beautiful, we're telling them they're pretty, we're telling them they can make their own salary, we're putting them into more and more escalating positions of degradation, and we're putting it on video, and that's going to be there with them for the rest of their life. And it didn't really hit me until I had a daughter, and someone told me one day, they said, hey, when you look at pornography, think about that. That's someone's daughter, right? Okay, so how is this happening, right? How are they consuming this pornography? Believe it or not, when I was a kid, there was the family PC, right? Everybody remembers that. There was a computer that was in the living room, or it was in our case, it was in the sewing room. We had a sewing room, and then it became my room, and the day I moved out, it became a sewing room again. You get it, right? And you've been there. And so there was one machine. You had the dial-up internet. It was cumbersome. It was slow. People had to get off the phone. Remember those days, right? I'll get off the phone. I want to use the internet, right? AOL, things of that nature. It was a lot harder to access pornography. In that cases, if you were a kid, you wanted to get on pornography, you're usually having to sneak into that room, wait until your parents went to bed, things of that nature. This is actually a study from a company that's called MindGeek. Now, MindGeek is one of the largest international companies out there. MindGeek runs a bunch of tube sites. Tube sites are sites like Pornhub, YouPorn, things of that nature. These are these free websites that you can go to and watch clips of porn. You just go to the website. There's no sign up. There's no information you have to put in. Boom. If you went to Pornhub.com right now, please don't. But if you went to Pornhub.com right now, you would just see about 100 thumbnails of different porn videos. And you could click on any one and watch them, right? So they are one of the most trafficked websites in the world, okay? And one of the things that they do is they actually employ statisticians to look at the stats of people that use porn. Believe it or not, one of the most busiest days, if this doesn't tell you something about where our society is going, one of the most busiest days for porn watching is Christmas Day. Think about that for a minute. All right? So, but anyways, what they've done is they've done this study, and they basically said, where is porn, how are people consuming porn, where is porn being consuming from? And mobile and tablet usage, so we're talking cell phones and iPads and Samsung tablets and things of that nature, have overtaken in the last 2 years usage on a personal computer. So it used to be, as parents, we would go and install some filtering software on a computer, and we'd go, we're done, cool. Kids can't look at porn anymore. Okay, well, your kids aren't looking at porn on the family computer. They're not looking at porn on their laptop. They got their phones, they got their tablets, their Amazon Fire, their Kindles, their iPads, their Samsung Galaxies. That's how porn is being consumed right now. And then the interesting thing to me as I did this research is it's not just mobile. It's also on social media. One of the most common websites, believe it or not, for pornography viewing is on Snapchat, where these women will go and they'll post pictures of themselves on Snapchat. And then you can sign up to be their friend on Snapchat, and then they'll post more and more pictures and things of that nature. And these women are monetizing this, and they're making money this way off of that, off of doing that. And then you see there's a lot of porn on Twitter, there's a lot of porn out there. Facebook's a little better, but at the end of the day, Reddit, some of these more common websites are places where you would think, okay, it's just social media. But pornography and porn suppliers and studios have figured out that their best way to get in anymore is through a mobile experience. Well, they're going to use one of the most common mobile apps to present their content to people. Now, they will say they don't target children. Okay, I'm not going to argue that today or not, but our children are using these apps. Okay, and so interesting fact, and we're going to talk about why that matters as we talk about how we have to protect our children, because you have to look at it from a different angle of just saying it's the home PC anymore. Make sense? All right. So, in addition to how it's commonly accessed, this slide is an important slide here. Again, mobile and tablet are the most common ways. But in addition to that, I want to talk about the most common ways that youth today are hiding their tracks using these websites. So this might be one to take a slide to take a picture of. I will also give you guys this slide content. I'll get it to Zane so he can publish it somewhere for you guys as well. But in addition to what they're doing is kids are figuring out smart ways to get around the most conventional ways of blocking access to pornography, all right? In some cases, your kids don't even have to even worry about this because the parents aren't doing anything. But assuming you are, and you're just one of those parents that grabs your kid's phone and looks at what they're looking at once in a while, here are some things that you want to look for. First and foremost is a lot of times on phones or tablets, there's like on an iPhone, right? Let's take an iPhone, for example. Pretty much everybody in here is familiar with the iPhone. Safari is your mobile application for viewing websites, right? So you can go into Safari, you can look at the history, you can see what your kids have done, assuming they didn't delete the history. But what we're seeing more and more of is there are studies done where kids are downloading a separate mobile app. So they're downloading Google Chrome, which is a web browser, or Firefox, which is a web browser, maybe you've all heard of it, onto their phone, okay? Now it's in a separate app, okay? So it's not being logged through the same application that your phone would. And so now they found a way to circumvent anything that you might have put on the iPhone to block them from being able to do things. That's what our kids are doing nowadays. I'm going to talk about how we can address that. In addition to that, there's a lot of times where your kids are doing, and they're going and downloading an application like LimeWire, BitTorrent, Morpheus, Popcorn Time. These applications are applications that allow your kids to basically, what you'll hear the term torrent. And all torrent is this idea where I have a video, okay? And maybe Tori has the video on her computer, and I have the video on my computer. And I'm sorry, what's your name? Matt has the video on his computer, and where all of our computers are connected and sharing that video together. So I'm downloading a little bit of that video from everybody. So these kids are downloading these softwares, and they're putting the videos on their machine, and they're able to torrent entire feature-length pornography videos outside of having to use a web browser or anything of that nature. Well, why is that important? Well, if you have web filtering software, now it's worthless, okay? Because your kids are just going to go and download this app and download a full version of pornography or something else, right? It's also used to download illegal movies and things of that nature. It's not just used for pornography. There's very rare good uses for that for a teenager, let's be honest. There's other uses for torrent software out there, but if you're a teenager and you've got torrent software on your machine, chances are you're doing something nefarious. Interestingly enough, how many of you have a Netflix account? Everyone, right? They're synonymous with just life anymore. I mean, you have a Netflix account. Everybody's got Netflix. Here's the thing. If you don't set up parental controls on Netflix, which most people don't, usually I have different profiles and things of that nature on Netflix. Netflix itself has whole sections devoted not necessarily to hardcore pornography. It's not the stuff that's going to that's going to just blow your mind. It's like, oh, that's just disgusting. But at the same point, there is a lot of what's called softcore pornography on there. So that's where softcore, the difference between softcore and hardcore, not to go into too much detail, one shows penetration, one doesn't. But it's still a lot of nudity and unwholesome sexual acts that are happening out there on the internet. And so Netflix, if you go on Netflix and just type in sex in a Netflix search when you get home on the same machine that your kids watch Netflix on, there's one movie out there called Nymphomaniac, which is basically about a woman who's trying to have sex with as many people as possible in one given day. And there's different movies out there that are available on Netflix if you don't set up any parental controls. HBO Go, same thing. All of these services, they have, like HBO Go has a, I forget what they call it, I think it's called Late Night. It's a section on HBO Go streaming where it's just nothing but, as much you can imagine, late night television shows for adults. Or, I hate when they say adults because I'm an adult and I don't watch late night HBO Go. But you get my point, right? So those are things that outside of the box, it's not just going to playboy.com and hitting enter and giggling a little bit, right? These things are very real in front of your kids out there right now. I promise you, as though I'm scaring you right now, I'm going to give you real-world ways to control this. So I'm not just going to go, okay, now, bye. Good luck. I'm not going to do that to you, all right? So, but I want to make sure you guys understand that the landscape is changing. And if we're not reacting to it, then we're going to fall behind. Okay, so from a technology perspective, again, I kind of talked about this already, but things to look for, right? Additional browsers installed on the phone. That's a big one. There's very real, legitimate reasons, legitimate reasons for like Google Chrome or other browsers to be installed on an iPad or an iPhone of your kid. Very, very few legitimate reasons. And so that is usually a red flag. The BitTorrent clients, I put up some of the more ones. Again, very rarely a legit reason. If you go into their phone or their iPad or their computer and their browser history is completely clean, so it says that there's been no websites visited in the last week, chances are they're doing something they don't want you to see. Okay, I haven't cleared my browser history in like 3 years. My wife could go home and look at my browser history right now. It's pretty boring. I'm a nerd. There's just a bunch of geek websites on there. But the point is if you go on your kid's machine and the browser history is cleared, that's a sign. All right? And these, by the way, these are not things that I came up from. This is from research that I compiled over time from different sites about this. The other one I want to talk about, it's kind of hard to, if you're not into technology, it's not easy to understand necessarily, but it's something that I want to make sure you guys get. It's this idea of VPN clients. Okay, so VPN is a technology that has really taken off in the last 2 or 3 years in the consumer space. It used to be used to essentially connect branch offices of companies together, right? So I have an office in Vancouver, I have an office in Indianapolis, I need to connect them together as if I just drug a long cable across the internet and plugged them in, right? So I use something called a virtual private network. It allows me to use the internet to connect 2 offices together and send that information between the 2 offices, all right? Here's what's happening though. All this filtering software, all of these things that you have out there, what you're trying to do is you're trying to protect your children or protect different things. These VPN companies have popped up, and what they're doing is they're allowing you to install this application on your machine and tunnel all of your traffic through somewhere else in the country, okay? So, for example, I have a VPN software, and I'm in Indianapolis, and my parents have installed filtering software on my computer, and I can't get out to Playboy.com. All right, bummer. Playboy's blocked, okay? I got all my buddies over. I want to show them Playboy. So what do? I download this VPN software, and I say, you know what? Route all my traffic, not through Indianapolis, but through Texas. Make it look like I'm coming through Texas. All of a sudden, now I have no block on my machine. I can do whatever I need to do, right? There's a lot of these out there. Now, there are some legitimate risks, usages for them. I don't want to talk about all VPN clients are bad on anybody's machine, but the reality is teenagers are using these more and more to be able to basically circumvent. There's whole forums online where teenagers get together and talk about whatever software their parents put on their machine and what they're trying to do to block that from happening, right? And so that's just something that I would encourage you to look for as well. I put some of the more common ones up there that you would see. If you see applications on your kid's phone or iPads, private internet access, CyberGhost, Viper, those are the most common ones. That's something to question. Why is that there? Okay? Not normally at their age a legitimate use for it. I'll give you a legitimate use just in case you're curious. I have a lot of friends in Canada, right? We have an office up in Canada. Canada Netflix, it's terrible. There's like nothing good on Canada Netflix. So you know what they do? They download VPN software, and they make it look like they're coming from Chicago, and they get US Netflix. It's not exactly the most legal thing in the world, but all of a sudden now they've got a bunch of programs that are from the US Netflix. That's a legitimate in air quotes, use of the software, but that's what they're doing, all right? Okay, from a behavior perspective, this came from Empower Kids. It's a website, an organization that is more, it's like psychiatric, it's a bunch of child psychiatrists, and they talk about what to look for from your kids if you think they might have a pornography addiction or be stumbling into that. Taking phone to the bathroom. There's no legitimate reason for a teenager or a kid to take a phone to the bathroom. Don't let your kids take the phone to the bathroom. Especially if they're a teenage boy, there's probably not a good reason for that. Inappropriate sexual knowledge for age, if you hear them using slang, a lot of that slang is brought up in porn. If they're using that slang, where do they hear it from? Okay? Unhealthy pattern of staying up late. Why are they staying up late? When I was a kid, I stayed up late to read with a flashlight under the bed, right? I'm not saying that your kid's not doing the same thing either, but those are things that child psychiatrists are saying to look out for. Technology obsession, I put that up there. I had a hard time with that because I'm obsessed with technology, but I'm not obsessed with porn. So, but at the same point, you know, it is something to look for in your children. If they're constantly on their tablet, they're constantly behind closed doors, you have a parent should pick up that device and look at it. I had a parent argue with me. It just blew my mind. So if you feel this way, forgive me. I don't mean to insult you, but they said, well, my child needs their privacy. What? Really? No. Your child needs no privacy. My daughter, she's 15 years old. I love her to death, okay? Now, she get privacy, of course, when she, she's going to go change and things like that, of course. But let me tell you something about my daughter. Any technology that she owns, I know everything she does. Every text message she sends, everything of that nature. And she knows that I know. I don't hide this from her. It's not like I'm sneaking from her and telling her that I'm looking at these things and things of that nature. She knows that we have access to everything. There's a sense of accountability there. But if you live in a world where you think your children deserve privacy, no, that is your phone. That is your service, and you have an obligation, I believe, to protect them until they're of age when they can make their own decisions. And in my house, that's not so you leave, okay? So when I had a parent kind of make that argument to me, well, why I don't put any of that software on my kids' thing. So basically what you're saying is all those slides that I put up earlier about how pornography affects the mind and sex life in adults and all those other different things and more that we're going to talk about, those aren't important to you. Your child feeling that you have a good relationship with them because you gave them privacy is more important. That's the argument. I'm sorry, you're wrong, right? So just keep that in mind. I'm going forward in all these talks as if to say, we're going to look and watch everything your kids do. If you disagree with me, then I can't help you, right? But if you agree with me, stay tuned because we're going to talk about it. Okay, so social media. Let's jump to that. So I'm going to go through these like I said I was, and then what we're going to do, we're going to go back and we're going to talk about now how to filter and block and accountability, okay? So let's just bear with me here as I go through these different topics. You guys still with me? Awesome. All right. Okay. Whew. I edited these slides this morning, actually. I'm a little bit of a procrastinator. I gave this presentation like a month ago? Stuff has happened since then, all right? I'm not going to call them out directly by name, but there was you've seen the news, right? Private high school here in Indiana had a bullying incident, incredibly vulgar video by some cheerleaders. They actually went as far as to premeditate the song they were going to sing about one of their fellow cheerleaders. It was extremely vulgar. Don't watch it. I made the mistake of watching it. And then it got posted online. Now, it's unclear if the intention was forever to be posted online, but let's just say, if you record something in the 21st century, it's going to get posted online. I gave a similar talk to a group of high school students about a month and a half ago, or 2 months ago, and I said, the internet is forever. I said, I actually told them, I said, I emphasize with you guys, my heart breaks for you because guess what? Everything you say or do or any decision you make as a high schooler will stick with you forever. It's not like when I was growing up, I did a lot of stupid stuff at 16 and 17, and nobody knows about it, right? Everything stupid that my daughter does at 16 or 17 is going to make its way across the internet. That is a world that No one's ever thought about how does a high schooler respond to that anymore, right? How do we protect our kids from that? So I looked at these kids and I said, please, you have to think way more about your choices that your hormones make you make than anyone else in any other generation. Don't screw up. And if you do, make sure you've got some way to control that situation, because guess what? Those kids that have made the news over and over again, we can vilify them, right? We can vilify those girls that made that video that said so many terrible things. We can break them down. We can tear them down and say, kick them out, throw them out. They're terrible kids. But you know what? That was my first reaction, and then I had a little bit of a heart check, and I thought to myself, man, that 17-year-old or 16-year-old, I don't know how old they were, that made those videos, they made a stupid choice. The enemy got to them. They may go on in their lives. They're going to be 30, and that's going to follow them, right? And my heart breaks for them, because they have to live with that right now. They have to live with that with any new employers. Now, let me be clear. My heart breaks for the girl that they bullied much more. But at the same time, at 16 or 17, to have your whole life changed by a stupid decision you made about the internet, that's a problem. And as Christians, we can vilify these kids, or we can come alongside them and go, we have a problem as a community, right? And so that's what's important to me. But you know what? This is such a serious issue. We've had suicides in the last month. These two screen captures I have up here, these are two separate suicide cases, 12 years old, getting cyberbullied on social media and killing themselves over it, right? Because, again, I'm not trying to empathize with these attackers. I don't want anybody to take me off, but think about it for a minute. Not just the attackers that have to live with this for the rest of their life, the stupid bullying mistakes that they made. I know people that bullied me when I was in school that are great people now, right? But also the victim. That victim of the one that was local here, her parents went around and were begging news companies, just pull down the video. My daughter doesn't need to see this on the news over and over again. Don't stop talking about it. Just take it out of the limelight. Because now that daughter has to live with that for the rest of her life too. And so I stood in front of these kids 2 months ago, before these incidents even happened, before these 3 incidents even happened. I stood in front of a room of about 60 high school students. And I said, man, guys, you got to be careful about what you're doing, and you've got to realize that these consequences go way far beyond what they used to, right? So the media is taking notice to this, and social media companies are taking notice to this. There's something I want you to keep a watch on. COPPA. So COPPA is the Children's Online Privacy Act, okay? Now, the COPPA was originally introduced a while back, and the whole idea was they can't. The whole idea was any websites that are created or hosted within the international borders of COPPA have to have registration requirements. They cannot let your 6-year-old go and sign up for a Facebook account. They cannot let your 7-year-old go and sign up for some online gaming account, right? So the age of the COPPA says that your kid can go and sign up for a social media account without being charged a fee, right? If these websites break this, the government can come after them. The FCC can actually fine them for every single case, all right? It's 13. Now, what's happening is there's a lot of talk about that age changing for the slide I just showed you before, but also because there's a lot of privacy laws changing, and they start, I don't know how many of you noticed, but a lot of technology, public policy, and things of that nature usually comes out of the UK first. They have more density of people. They have their laws are a little bit quicker to come to the books, and so they basically got together and they said, you know what, we really need to revamp some of these privacy laws. And so now all of these websites are starting to jump on because they have a big coming in the European Union. And so if you look at it, Facebook is now saying, you know what? As of July 2018, you have to prove you're 13. So in some cases, they're actually making you go through a proof of age verification process that they didn't used to before, right? It used to be you just go on there and say, yeah, I'm 13, and then boom, you had a Facebook account. Now they're actually going through verification processes. Twitter's trying to do the same thing, but it's hard to do when you have hundreds of millions of accounts. You cannot rely on these websites to do it. The reason I put this up here is because I want to show you that these companies that make dollars off of your kids, which, by the way, the ages of 10 to 18 have the most disposable discretionary income of any generation in the history of ever, okay? So guess what? They're not going after you for advertisements online on social media. They're going after your kids because your kids are the ones that have the dollars to spend. Now, it might come from mom and dad's paycheck, but the reality is that you are spending more on your kids' happiness, especially online, or and in general, than any other generation ever did before. When I was a kid, it was like go out and play with sticks and rocks, right? I mean, not really. I had some toys. But now, like, my kids come to me like, can I have money for my Minecraft account? I'm like, what? Like, that's not even real. It's like virtual. Like, what happens if I give this to you, right? It's a different world we live in. And so these websites that are trying to address this, they're putting in these sensitivity filters and things of that nature. Let me be very clear with you. They don't work, okay? The best sensitivity filter is you, and we'll get to that in a minute. Okay, so what are the kids using today? These are the top applications when recently surveyed, either through online usage or also from surveying children, your kids' ages, what applications are out there and being used right now. WhatsApp. WhatsApp is a company that's owned by Facebook. It's a messaging app, okay? So a lot of you go, I'm not going to let my kid text message. Guess what? They went and downloaded WhatsApp, okay? And they're using WhatsApp instead. WhatsApp is basically another form of text messaging software. It's owned by Facebook. It's a legit app. It's a messaging app. It's kind of like Facebook Messenger, but Facebook bought them. But a lot of kids are moving to that because guess what? If you have software on your kid's machine or you're looking at their text messages, their kids have figured that out. They want to send a message. They don't want you to see it. They're going to download a separate app to do that. WhatsApp is the most common for that. Discord, it's a gaming platform that allows kids to meet up with other kids for online gaming. Legitimate uses for it. It's got text and voice chat turned on by default. If you don't set any parental controls, if you don't know what you're doing, your kids have access to all sorts of text and voice chat. It turns on their camera for them. All those different things are available to them. It's an app they can have. How many of you heard of Snapchat? Snapchat gets a lot of grief. Snapchat has this whole idea that you take a picture and then afterwards it goes away, right? It's just there for you to quick chat back and forth, okay? It doesn't go away, okay, is number one. Number two is you can always take a screenshot. Now, you do get a notification that someone took a screenshot of the picture that you took. But the thing about Snapchat is by far, when a lot of studies have been done, the most common for finding adult content on it, okay? It is much more geared toward the older generations and 18 plus than any of the other applications that I could talk about up here, all right? I will not let my daughter use Snapchat, okay? And I'm going to talk about what I do let my kids use and how and why and what my thought is behind that. But I will just say that right now, I will not let my daughter use Snapchat. Instagram is great. Thing about Instagram you got to be careful with is Instagram. I'm sure you've all heard of it. Sharing pictures and everything. By default, you sign up for an Instagram account. At least it was like this way about a month ago. They may have changed it. A lot of things are changing now. It's public. It's open to everybody. Every picture you post on there, anybody can follow you. You can see. If you don't turn on privacy on Instagram, anybody can see it. Whisper. I hate this one. This one is ugly. I've asked different people I've talked to give me a good reason for the app I'm about to describe to you. Whisper basically uses location awareness, okay? So what location awareness is on your phone is if I have a location on my phone right now, it knows where I am, okay? And any app that I say allowed to use my location knows where I am. So Whisper does that, turns on location awareness. And now anybody else who has the Whisper app, you can post things anonymously, okay, in the location that you're at. It's an anonymous chat, and it's basically ideas that you can post what you're thinking or something anonymously, but it only goes in a certain location radius of where your phone is, okay? So think about what that could be used for. Talk about cyberbullying to the extreme there, okay? If I'm in a high school and I turn on Whisper, okay, and then I can just whisper about the girl next to me and nobody knows who I am, and then all of a sudden everybody else starts liking that whisper and things of that nature. That's the kind of stuff that's out there, guys. And so I can't think of a good reason why I would ever let my kids install Whisper. 9gag and Tumblr. How many of you heard the term meme, internet meme? You know, all those pictures, they have the captions on them. They're hilarious. I love them. I think they're funny. A lot of them are, right? But then a lot of them are also kind of vulgar, and they've been used for cyberbullying too, right? You'll see where they'll put a kid's name up there, and then they'll say something about the kid. A lot of that on Tumblr and then a website called 9gag. Again, apps that are out there that you need to be aware of what they are. Half the battle is knowing, right? Know thy enemy. Okay. So we kind of talked about that. Again, just kind of reiterate, Snapchat, it's not, your kids are going to tell you, but Mom, Snapchat, the chats go away. They do not. okay? I just don't believe it. In addition to that, advertisements on Snapchat, because these all have to be paid for some way, they've gotten in a lot of trouble lately for the advertisements on Snapchat being very risque, okay? And so even though you can say what your age is on Snapchat, there has been studies done where the advertisements they're getting are for like Cosmos, like 20 ways to please your lover with an ice cube, comes up on your 12-year-olds, what they're using, right? I mean, that's the kind of stuff you've got to watch for. Whisper, again, not really anonymous. Instagram, they're public unless you say otherwise. And then these chat apps like WhatsApp and Discord, here's my problem with them. Not that I'm just dogging on everything. I'll get to that in a minute. But they're just a way to circumvent. They're another place that you have to look to see what's happening in your child's life and what they're communicating about, right? And not to say that there aren't some good uses for these applications. I know missionaries that use WhatsApp because it's free text messaging and you can use it in international countries, okay? There's good in everything, right? You just have to find where the kind of the middle road is, right? And that's what we're trying to do today. But when you have kids, narrowing down the amount of avenues they have to communicate, to me, makes a lot of sense because now I'm having to focus on just a couple things. And again, I'm going to keep teasing you, but we're going to talk about the best ways to do that here in a minute. So what's the risk reward, right? 2017, 2018, this is Indiana Department of Education. This is not the United States, folks. This is Indiana. This is here in our backyard. 2,466 incidents of electronic bullying. Those are the ones that were reported, okay? That's just across 1 year, okay? Sexual predators utilize chat sites to groom children. Oh, my goodness. More and more of this. If your child has an Instagram account and she takes a selfie, or he, I'm not going to just pick on girls, okay? But, you know, the selfie, the click, right? All right? Here's what's happening. Oh, darling, you look beautiful. You should model for me one day. Why don't you, when you turn, sometimes they'll say, why don't you turn 18? Why don't you come out to California and do some photo shoots with me? Okay, they get out there. Next thing you know, literally, that's how most of the stories happen. Next thing you know, they're into pornography. Okay, and your kid's out there. It happens all the time. Do not say, not my kid, okay? They groom these kids at a young age. They take these pictures. There are studios out there looking for Instagram photos, okay? I watched a documentary just recently. I can't remember what it was, but it was on how these girls get into pornography. And it wasn't vulgar or anything. It was a pretty decently done documentary. And I watched it kind of to learn a little bit about this. And the studios were literally scrolling through Instagram posts looking for girls that looked like they would want them on their set. And you know what they were looking for? Oh, well, we really want the innocent, the ones that look like the girls next door. That's what guys are into nowadays, not these blonde bombshells. They want the kids that look like the girls next door, okay? One of the girls they featured was a high schooler from Indiana that moved out to California and got into pornography. It's there. It's real. It's happening, okay? And we've got to be aware of it. Depression and anxiety. Man, our kids are depressed, okay? We see so much of it out there today in today's world. And we talk about, and I talked about when I talked to the high schoolers, I'll go back to the whole dopamine thing. The whole dopamine idea of I post something online. You're all guilty of it. Just bear with me for a minute. How many of you in here have a Facebook account? Most of you? Okay. Post something on Facebook. Come back about 15 minutes later. What's the first thing you look for on that post? How many likes you got. You know why? Because as humans, we love that idea that someone took the time to look at our stuff, they saw our stuff, and they liked it. I got 15 likes. You know what that is? That's that dopamine rush, right? And then as adults, we can kind of control that, right? Okay, you know, I posted something, I wanted somebody to see it, got some likes, that's cool. Kids value those self-worth based on that kind of stuff, right? And so these kids are out there and they're posting these things on social media and they're looking for that instant gratification, that dopamine rush that comes with all of my kids just like this post, or I wrote this story or whatever it might be, or I drew a picture, I took this picture of my selfie and oh, look, the boy I liked it on Facebook, right? That stuff is real and it's psychological for our children, right? The hormones are racing. They want to feel liked. They want to feel included. As adults, we do it too, right? We don't say we don't, because we do. And so if we're doing it, certainly our kids are. And what that's creating is you've already got these kids, in some cases, who feel that they're not part of the group, right? They're already depressed. They already have anxiety. Some of them might have clinical mental illness. And now we're putting them in a situation where all of their friends are getting likes, and they post something, they put themselves out there, they're vulnerable, and the next thing you know, they're bullied or whatever have you, and that's how we end up with 12-year-olds hanging themselves in the closet over something that was said online, right? This is the world of that our kids are being raised up in, and we've got to protect that. We've got to look at that. But you know what? It's not all bad, is it? No, of course not. I have a Facebook account. I have a Twitter account. It's visibility. It's good visibility for the church. It's good visibility for families to stay connected, for friends to stay connected. I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for Facebook. Zane reached out and said, hey, will you come talk to my church? Absolutely. I'd love to. There are plenty of good uses for it. Capturing memories. I love the setting on Facebook that says this year, last year, or in 2015 or 2013. And I see pictures of like my kids when they were little. And I'm like, oh, and I share it with my wife. I'm like, look, they were little. Now they're not anymore. What happened? That's cool stuff, right? And healthy interaction. It's always good to have healthy interaction. And you can do that online. You just got to be aware of what's out there. All right. You guys still with me? All right, cool. Now, we're going to get to privacy in just a minute, but I do want to give you a quick overview of privacy in general. All right, here is Grant Dawson's theory on privacy on the internet. There is none, period. Okay, we're done. No, just kidding. There really isn't, though, okay? Here's what I would tell. People say, well, but I set my Facebook settings, and only my friends can see my pictures. Okay, that's good. My company does a lot of, we do a lot of different things where we don't want other people to see it. And so we spend a lot of money on, protecting our intellectual property. All companies do, right? It's not anything unique. And then I always make the argument whenever I'm talking to anybody, but you know what? We could spend $1 million on locking down those files and making sure nobody saw our trade secrets, when all it takes is somebody to go in there and take a picture of the screen and walk away, right? These things are synonymous, right? Ubiquitous. We live in the world of having them. And it's the same with social media, right? If I have a video out there, I'm not certain if those girls at the private high school meant for that to get shared out like it did, but it did, right? And there's plenty of stories about that. There are plenty of employers who have not hired people based on what they posted online 3 or 4 years ago. Man, we're seeing it in the political community now. We're digging up tweets on people from 8 years ago and not electing them for it, okay? That's real, right? And so this idea that you have privacy just because you lock things down, there are companies that are left and right that are social media companies that are getting their information. Facebook had it happen. They had to come out and they got testified in Congress that, hey, you know what, yeah, we kind of let people have access to your information even though you told us not to. None of you cared. How many of you deleted your Facebook account? 0. Nobody went, I'm outraged. I saw that on C-SPAN. No. We still all have Facebook accounts. And so if you go into it with the notion that whatever you post online is actually still going to be there, no matter what you say, then it's a lot easier to then set your mentality that way. And that's the mentality we have to give our children. This is going to live with you forever. Do you want to click that button? Now, I would argue at 13, you can't make that decision very well. Some of us can't make that decision at 35. However, I would argue that that's the thing you have to think about when you decide if you want your child to have it. Do you want them to hate you now because they can't have a Facebook account? Or do you want them to love you when they're 35, when they get that job, because some employer like me didn't go and search their Facebook account and find something that I thought was vulgar, and I don't want that character in my life? Okay? That's real. That happens. At the same time, there are privacy wizards. You should at least use them. If you're going to use these sites, at least set some of the privacy. Just don't rely on it and wash your hands of it and say you're done. Additionally, I talked about church being good. There's 2 tools from a privacy perspective that I recommend that all of you have, just from a parental perspective. This has little to do with pornography or anything of that nature. The first is called LastPass. We live in a world of passwords, okay? Everybody's got a password for everything. I love this tool. It is free. Go download it. It'll make your life so much better. I do not get paid for telling you this. LastPass is a tool that allows you to basically, it will connect all of your websites together that you have, and it will give you one password that you can use your fingerprint on your phone for, and then it will generate very secure passwords for all the websites that you have. You should have your kids use it. You should use it because here's the thing. You never remember the password for Facebook. My password for Facebook is like 32 characters long and has like, exclamation points and numbers and everything, but I don't remember it. I only remember my one last password that I use my fingerprint for to log into Facebook. So it generates a password. I never see it. I don't care about it. It's there. I just use LastPass to log in. All right? It's a great tool because it stops your kids from having to worry about someone hacking in their account, posting stuff about them. That's another way cyberbullying happens a lot of. It's a great tool. It's free. I encourage it to look into it. The other one is called CCleaner. CCleaner is a tool that allows you to get all that junk that just collaborates on your computer, the internet history, all of those different things, cookies, all those different stuff, and just keeps your computer clean. When you're using a computer that may be a shared computer, and you're on your bank account or whatever it might be, it's a great tool to kind of, I won't say hide your tracks, but more just kind of clean up, right? So those are the tools when I talk about privacy, when I give like just talking about privacy, which I'm not today, I'm talking about a lot of things. Those are two tools that I point out, okay? Both will make your lives much easier. Okay, before we get to the how, one more topic I want to talk about because believe it or not, it is here. It's not going away, okay? And that is online gaming. Okay. This generation coming up. They're arguing about what are we going to call them, X-Lennials and all these stupid names. Here's what they really are. They're the YouTube generation, okay? Basically, this is interesting because the media companies are panicking. They do not know what to do right now because the kids that I just talked about that had the most disposable and discretionary income are the same ones that are no longer watching TV. TV's the old thing, right? I believe this. Tori, keep me honest. If we canceled cable at our house, I don't think our kids would care. Because to them, the things that they like to watch online, now we screen it, are the YouTubes and the very quick. The attention spans are less, right? I can watch a 10-minute episode on YouTube of my favorite YouTuber or whatever it might want to be. Zane made a comment earlier. He said, I don't get it. I don't understand these kids that like to watch other people play video games. Well, sorry, Zane, that's a billions of dollar industry. You missed that ship. You could have been a billionaire. Because it's real. It's there today, okay? I talked to a group of, again, going back to I had this conversation with 60-some high schoolers, and I talked to them about it, and they all said, yeah, I'd rather watch YouTube than watch TV. And I said, and I challenged them. I said this. I said, you know what? YouTube's a medium. Just like anything else, it's a medium. I think your church uses it, right? You have a YouTube channel? Okay. And I said, for those of you, you look at some of these YouTube followers, like the ones you hear about in the news. Like there's one called Ninja. He plays Fortnite. You guys heard of Fortnite? It's a video game, right? He's got like a bajillion followers. He makes like 6 figures a month, okay? All right? All of them are kids. Every single one of them, okay? And I look at that and I go, man, if we could get some of our youth who are Christ-minded to step up and take that charge, think of how many youth we could reach through that medium. What if we said, you know what? Get behind me, Satan. We're taking this over. This is the churches now. And we started producing content on these platforms that were both fun, educational, but also from a Christ-centered mind. So I looked at these 60 kids in the room and I said, which one of you are going to be the next Ninja, but do it from a Christ-centered? Which one of you? Who in this room likes video games? Everybody raise their hand. Who likes YouTube? Everybody raise their hand. Who wants to make $100,000 a month? Everybody raises their hand. What are you guys doing? Right? This is the church needs you to step up. This is the new generation, right? The church has done. We do podcasts. We've changed our worship to reflect our youth. We have, right? How many of us still do the stand-up, sit-down hymns anymore? Very few churches, right? The church has to. We don't have to change who we are, but we do have to make sure that we're reaching out to these generations and how we do it. And so, the thing about YouTube is, content is generated so fast, and there's very little screening of that content. It's all artificial intelligence, right? So there's very little screening of that content. Now, for the more popular YouTubers, they realize in order to reach a wider audience, especially kids, they're often sponsored behind the scenes, by companies like Mattel and things of that nature. So for the more popular YouTubers that are out there, they're smart enough from a business decision, if only, to not post graphic or bad content because they'll lose their sponsorships, right? And they don't want that. But there's a ton of videos out there that haven't been through any sort of sponsorship or any sort of filtering. And so in our house, there is a list of YouTubers you're allowed to watch. And there's a list of, and everything, and there's not a list that you're not allowed to watch. This is what you're allowed to watch and everything else. If we see you on something that's not one of those YouTube lists, boom, it's gone. And we'll talk about how to do that in a minute. It's getting easier. There's no official rating system. Even something seemingly clean stars can have their moments. I talked about Ninja. Ninja's cleaned up his act. But there's videos of Ninja, and again, we're talking about hundreds of thousands of kids, going off on a very graphical, language-filled tirade, right? Everybody has their moments. But again, we have to protect our kids and wonder ourselves, what are they being influenced by? Esports and streaming. Okay, this isn't going anywhere either. Esports is here to say, this is an interesting fact. They expect the sales of esports, the clothing lines and the jerseys and hats over the next 5 to 10 years, I think. Don't quote me on this. It's somewhere in there, to actually go above and beyond NBA. All right? So the generation that's coming up, they would rather watch people play video games, Zane, sorry, than watch an NBA basketball game. You seen the stands in NFL lately? They're not full, okay? This generation that has all this discretionary income, they're changing it. They're building esports arenas that are selling out for watching people play video games. It is coming. It's the new thing. Again, I challenged these kids. I said, what are you doing about that? How many of you are going to be the next Tim Tebow of esports? I can't wait to see today that somebody wins like a match in a video game online and then Tebows. Wouldn't that be cool? That'd be hilarious. Maybe it's just me. The idea is that, yes, esports, for those of you who don't know, it's competitive video game. There's millions of dollars at stake. Kids get into it. The ages that most esports people are active are between the ages of 17 to 22. Why? Because after that, you lose your reflexes. Can't do it anymore. All right? So these kids get involved. They get on these teams. They have agents. They play video games. They win money. They retire with millions of dollars. I looked at my parents the other day and I said, see, I told you Mario Brothers could have made me a millionaire. Still didn't believe me. My daughter, she's in esports. She's on a couple esports teams. She's very good. She plays competitive Overwatch, which is a video game. That's how I got into all this as a parent. I said, okay, hey, I gotta get on board. What am I gonna tell my daughter? You can't do this. You can't do your passion. Or do I try to build it with a biblical Christ-centered worldview? These kids that are streaming this content, your kids like to watch this. They like to watch other kids play video game. Minecraft is one of the biggest ones out there. I love to watch other kids play Minecraft, Dad. Okay. Well, there are some YouTubers out there that are really great. They're funny to watch, and they're very family-oriented. And I point my kids to those. And if they go somewhere else, they broke the trust. I know about it. Kick them off, right? But it's knowing what your kids are out there. Here's what I will tell you. If you're one of those parents that are trying to protect, and again, you don't have to agree with me, and you can pull me off stage at any point. If you're one of those parents who are trying to protect your kids from the world of video games and the world of this, understand that we live in a generation where this is the media of choice. And if you remember when you were growing up and you listened to that music and your parents said you can't listen to rock and roll or whatever it was, this is it. This is just this all over again. You do it in moderation and you help protect your kids from a biblical worldview. If you shut them out, there is no study that has ever been successful at saying if you shut your kids out and tell them they can't do anything, that the first thing they're not going to do is go figure out a way to do it, which is why we're here today. You have to build the trust just as much as you have to build it. So when I talk to these high schoolers, going back to that, when I talk to them and I said, look, you guys, I talked to the boys, the high school boys, about this whole trust idea, right? Because we're getting ready to transition into the how to block and how to monitor. I said, I'm gonna give this presentation to your parents later, all right? This is at our church. And I said, here's the thing, though. The girls were in the room. I did this purposely, okay? I didn't tell the youth pastor. Ask for forgiveness later. I said, here's the deal, right? I want you to look around some of these girls. Some of them may be your girlfriends. Some of them you might want to be your girlfriends. I said, I'm going to talk to your parents about how to block pornography, how to look at what you're doing, how to keep you accountable. But I said, at the end of the day, unless you hate the sin, you'll find a way. And so let me help you hate the sin. Statistically, one girl in this room is going to be sexually degraded on video in the next 2 years. Statistic. I mean, we have 60 kids in the room. One of them is going to happen. And chances are one of you might come across that video one day. Okay? Now, I call it sexually degraded. Other people call it pornography, whatever. Okay? I said, do you want the kids next to you, to the girls next to you that you might want to have a romantic relationship one day? Do you want them to go into that world where they're degraded sexually and basically abused sexually and told that they're nothing better than somebody else's gratification on a TV screen? The room got really quiet. I said, look, until you see what's happening behind the scenes, you can't really understand. We can go back to God every time and consume his grace, but I told these kids, you have to hate the sin. Really famous preacher one day said, you might come to God every day and say, ask for forgiveness, but until you hate the chains, he's just a chain breaker. Once you hate the chains, you develop a deeper relationship with God. And I just thought that really stuck home with me. And I told these kids, I said, look, you have to understand. You have to get real about what this is, because your hormones are going to want you to go look at that. The world's going to tell you it's okay. The world's going to tell you it's acceptable. And it's just a release and all these other things. And you're going to stumble, and you're going to look at it. Let's just get real. It's going to happen. Any man who says, I've never looked at internet pornography, he's lying, okay? But the reality is you have to get that mindset into your kids, or you're not going to get anywhere. I'll get off the pulpit. All right. Online gaming networks, quick talk about this. A lot of people go, Grant, I want my kids to be able to play video games. Which ones can I give them? And what I tell them is I say, okay, like Xbox and PlayStation are great, but if you've got a kid anywhere... There we go. I'm back. If you have a kid younger than 15, Nintendo is where it's at. Nintendo's got online gaming for kids figured out. They don't allow online chat through their games. Their names are protected with a family-centered name. Voice chat is almost rarely, if ever, supported in any of their games, but they still get to play online with their friends. So I told people, it's a little late for you guys now, if you're going to buy your kids a video game console, buy them a Switch, because it is the best way for them to experience online gaming with still being protected. Not to say that Xbox and PlayStation are bad, better for teenagers, but if you've got younger kids, the Switch is where it's at. In essence of time, I'm going to skip ahead a little bit on that. All right, the part you've all been waiting for. Let's talk about how we're going to do this. Okay. So there's a three-pronged approach to this. It's no more different than if you're going to war. We're about ready to go to war. You ready? We're going to go to war for our kids' minds. First, we have to detect what they're doing. We have to monitor what they're doing. And then we got to figure out a way to block it where it makes sense. Now, in order of importance, let me be very clear. Kids are smart. They'll find a way. We're going to talk about blocking. But your primary job is not to block. Your primary job is to know what's happening. Okay? Then as a parent, it's your job what to do with that information. I can't control that. But what I can do is tell you how to know what's happening. Okay, so there's three major types of filtering, okay? The first one, device level filtering, okay? This is filtering on your phone, on the device. I'm going to block it at the device level. Okay, I'm going to use a really cheesy example as we go through. We're going to just say playboy.com, okay? On a phone, if I have device level filtering, I'm going to make sure that that phone can't go to playboy.com. Job done. No? Okay, how do we know that they're not going to go to a tablet? All right, an average home anymore, I think it has like 8 connected devices. Ours has like 60. God help me. And there's different devices they can go to. They can go to a friend's device, right? And then we're going to talk about whole home systems. This is where you do the blocking at the home level. So in the world of IT, we say this is the egress point, all right? This is the point where all the traffic leaves the home. Okay, we're going to talk about how to filter that, okay, in very layman terms. Nobody has to have an IT degree to get this. And then we're also going to talk about where the newest attack front is. It's cellular networks. Okay, so now you blocked your home Wi-Fi and you blocked the devices, but gee, your kids have data on their phone. So what are you going to do about that too, right? Anybody overwhelmed yet? Yes, that's why we're here. Okay, pro tip, you need all three. Let's talk about them. Okay, good news. I am so excited for this because in the last 2 months since I first gave this presentation, 2 things have happened that have made your guys' lives so much easier. The 2 major players, Microsoft and Apple, have really stepped up their game. I'm going to give you 2 tools that you can use that will require no money on your part, just a little bit of legwork. Okay? There's other tools up here I'm going to talk about that have money, that have other features. But let's talk about 2. The first one is called Microsoft Families. If you have only Windows devices in your house, okay, Only Microsoft Windows machines. Maybe you'll have one, maybe you have two, maybe your kids have laptops. This is perfect for you. If you have Macs and Windows, it's going to get a little bit harder, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Microsoft Families allows you to set up your kids an account on their Windows machines, as well as you, in a family. I have the link to how to get started and how to get set up. It's in your handout that I handed you. And Microsoft Families is really cool. I don't know if you can see this very well. It's kind of blurry. But because what it lets you do is it lets you set screen time, and it lets you actually say, my kid can use this computer and these applications, and you can pick from what's on the computer during these times and lock it out any other time. And then if they try to get on during a time that they're not allowed on, or they've outused their time, then they get an alert. You get an alert that says they want more screen time. So if you look over here on the right, I don't know if you can see it very well. It's really blurry. I have notifications on Windows 10, and it says Noah, which is my son, wants some more screen time. And I got 3 buttons I can hit. I can give him 30 more minutes, an hour, or I can click more and then be very detailed about what I want to do. That's free. If you have Windows 10 or Windows 8, you can set that up on your computer today at home. There's a website. It will walk you through it. It's very simple, okay? You can also email me if you run any issues, and I'll try to help you, okay? But that is awesome. My wife and I use it all the time because now I know when the kids are getting on the computer, and I can actually control it. And after 30 minutes, it's kind of funny, right? You can hear they're playing Minecraft or something. You can hear oh! But it takes the argument out of it, right? Because now the computer's telling them they have to get off. I was talking to Tori about this morning, and I said, it hasn't been working well for you because I'm going to talk about it. And she goes, great. She goes, no, what it's done is it's taken the argument out of it, right? Because they don't fight anymore. They don't come to mom because they know. There are times it gives them a 2-minute warning. When it's up, they're done, right? Awesome. Okay? Very cool. Very free. The link is in the handout. The other one, I can't sing the praises about this enough. I used to get up here and say iPhones are one of the hardest to block as far as to keep your kids and lock down what they do. All right? It's gotten a lot better. This is the reason to get your kids a new phone if they have an older phone that you've given them from like 4 years ago. You have to have like an iPhone 5 or higher. So if any of your kids, you've handed them their 4, you might want to upgrade them because iOS 12 has got a feature called Screen Time. They don't do a really good job about promoting this at all, which I don't understand why, because it is glorious, okay? Here's what it does, okay? You have to set up an Apple family account, very much like a Microsoft family account. In our house, we have Apple tablets and Apple phones. And people say, why do you give your kid a phone? I said, well, because of this program. Okay? We give our kids Apple tablets, Apple phones, and we have Windows machines. Okay, so this is how this works. You set up an Apple account, your main Apple account, and then you get your kids all an Apple account. Okay? They'll walk through with their birth date and everything of that nature. And then you add them to your Apple family. 2 cool reasons to do that. Number one is if you are an Apple Music subscriber or you download or purchase any app, then they get it for free too. Okay, so you only have to buy it once for your family, which is kind of cool. Second reason is you can turn on Find My iPhone feature. Now, most people only use this when they lose their iPhone. But I'm not most people. I use it because I can see where my daughter is on the map at any given time. It's glorious. Going back to my daughter has no privacy, she knows. She knows I know where she is. And the other cool thing about this is this program called Screen Time, which is introduced in iOS 12. Screen Time sets up a 4-digit PIN that you will only know. You do not give it to your children. And you can actually go on there, and if you can see kind of on the right, it's really hard to see. You can actually go on there and say what applications they can access at any given time. Here's what we did. We said they can't access anything at any given time except the phone application. Not even text messages, except the phone application. All right? Why did we do that? Here's what's cool. If they ever want to access an application, they tap the application. It looks grayed out on their screen, on their phone, and then it says, I immediately get a notification. We'll get them at the same time. Bling. Emma would like to access the Messages app. And I can say, yeah, give her 30 minutes on Messages. Or Noah would like to access Geometry Wars, this game they like to play. And I can give him 30 minutes, like an hour. I can give him 8 hours, whatever I want to do, right? And then at the end of the week, I can look at a report and see what activity my kids did. Here's the cool thing. It works for websites, all right? So don't just, going back to what I said, if they're using only Safari and you don't let them put Google Chrome or anything else on there, if they open up Safari and they type in Google, I can approve Google. But then if they go to Safari and type in, going back to our terrible example, Playboy.com, it pops up and says they want to access Playboy.com. Well, no, right? Okay? And so It's free. It's included with your iPhone. If you don't have it set up, you should. If you don't have any kids, you should set it up because it's really enlightening. Because if you don't even turn on any of the parental controls, it'll tell you how much time you're spending on your phone. You want to be depressed? Do that. Okay? Cool stuff. All right? Be careful. It's limited by a PIN code. If your kid sees the PIN code, it's useless. Trust me, it already happened once in our house. We have one who's really smart. I don't know how. He probably looked through the mirror when I was plugging it in or something. I don't know. Great stuff. Works on websites. Goes back to if you're going to do this, do not let them install a secondary browser because if they ask for browser access, then they can access any website. Doesn't work anymore. Make sense? Okay. Let's talk about some of the others. Again, Apple screen time. You take nothing away from this conversation today. Porn is bad. Apple screen time, Microsoft families. Okay? Let's move on. Okay, so let's talk about the best device level monitoring options outside of those. Because in addition to that, it's a little bit of an eye chart, but in addition to having screen time and everything, some of you would say, well, I have Android phones, I have other tablets, or I want a little bit more. One of my favorites, if you are a man in this room and you struggle with pornography, or you know someone who does, this is a great tool, Covenant Eyes. What Covenant Eyes does is it allows you to set up an accountability partner. And if you install the software on all your devices, laptops, things of that nature, and anything you do, any websites you do, they get an emailed report at the end of the day of the websites you accessed. Doesn't block you from accessing anything necessarily unless you set it up to do so, but it does set a certain level of accountability. So if you're a parent, you have a kid, guess who the kid's accountability partner is? You. Okay? Great tool if you're looking for something that you can actually work with other men, but they have a family version as well. It requires the application to be installed on every device. It's not that expensive. It's like, don't quote me on this, I think it's like $30 a year or something. Cheap, something worth looking into. The filter, though, if you turn on the filter, it's a little over-ambitious. Sometimes it will block things that you're like, why did you block that, right? Again, going back to block is not as important as monitoring and detecting. Net Nanny, that's been around forever. Net Nanny has been kind of like the one that's there forever. And it's got some really cool things where it'll still let you see areas of the website, but it will actually mask like bad content, but still have the website up. So it'll like take out cuss words, but still leave the website there. That's cool for like chat programs and stuff. It's a little expensive, it's a little cumbersome, but if you're looking for something that can get a little bit more granular, Net Nanny is cool. QStudio is one of my favorites. It does the application limits and things of that nature. You're going to hear this term over and over again, MDM. What it stands for is mobile device management. It came from the IT world, and now it's in the consumer world, right? It's the idea that you can control multiple devices from one, right? That's what screen time is. It's just Apple's MDM, but there are other ones out there. QStudio is good if you have a lot of kids and you're trying to manage different age limits. You want to set different age limits of activity. That's a good one. If you have them all about the same age, it's probably not for you. But those are some of the more common ones that we run into. All right. This is the one that I want you all to do, regardless of if you do screen time, regardless if you do the Microsoft family. I'm going to talk about one that I'm terrible. I'm the media director at our church. How am I doing this? It's because I'm not used to these mics. So, okay, how do they work? The whole home studios are cool because regardless of the device, anybody that's connected to your home, you can filter the activity that they're doing, okay? Here's the way it works. I'll give you a quick example. All right. Now, if in the world of the internet, if I want to go to a website, what you're really doing when you type in a website that you want to go to is you're saying to your internet service provider, find google.com for me, all right? What's your name again? Matt. Okay, Matt. And then Matt, my internet service provider, would go and find Google for me, okay? And he would say, Google is here, and he would give me directions. Okay, so Matt, this is going to be a hard visual here, but I'm your 16-year-old daughter, okay? And I'm going to come to you, and first off, I just want you to give me directions. That's all I want to do. I want you to turn your dad mode off, and I'm going to say, Matt, get me to the nearest gas station from here. Where do I go, Matt? Give me the nearest gas station.
Speedway.
Okay, yeah, how do I get there?
Take a right out of the driveway, turn left on Newberry, turn right on Saratoga, turn left on US 40, turn left at Speedway.
That's impressive. Okay, now, that was how the ISP works, right? It just gives me the answer. Okay, now I want you to put on your dad hat. I'm your 16-year-old daughter. Hey, Dad, how do I get to the liquor store?
You don't need to know.
Thank you. Okay, that's how these whole home systems work, okay? The dad mode goes on, okay? And so the way that these things work is it tells your router, rather than using your ISP to say where everything is on the internet, go through one of these services that makes a decision on whether that's an actual legitimate request that should be asked in your house or not, okay? Here's the bonus part about this. It does two things. You get one of these, you can pretty much throw your antivirus software out. Because not only does it, you can set it to block like pornography and things of that nature, it'll also block known sites that give you malware and antivirus and things of that nature. The best one is OpenDNS. It's like $20 a year. It's very easy to install. I put directions on where to go to figure it out. You install it, you download it, you install it, you configure something on your router. Zane has offered to help any of you if you have any problems. Right, Zane? Okay, and so the way it works is then at that point, we become Dad Matt and not Matt that just gives away the answer on how to get to Speedway, okay? And it's great because it's helped me before because I've been doing stuff online and I've tried to go to a website, and how many of you accidentally come across something bad, right? Whatever it was. I actually almost downloaded a virus the other day, and it popped up and it said, no, this website's been blocked by your home administrator. Well, that's me. Good job, Grant. Right? And so it's cool stuff. It's $20 a year. It's totally worth it. OpenDNS. You can install it in your home router. Now, any of your kids' friends that come over that don't have any of that filtering software because their parents don't care like you did, guess what? They're going to have the same experience. So now your friends can't come over and go, we'll just look at it on my phone. Nope. Ha-ha. Okay? Good stuff. OpenDNS. Get it. All right? Good stuff. I want to talk about it because I get asked a lot. Well, what about this cool thing they sell at Target called Circle? Okay? I'm not a fan. Circle it's made by Disney. It's a device that hooks up to your router. It circumvents your router and kind of does the same thing as OpenDNS, but a different way. I'm not going to say it hardly ever works. That's not fair. I don't want to be a critique of the product. Just Google getting around Circle. There's like a bajillion websites out there on how kids can get around Circle. Your kid will figure it out pretty quick. And hopefully Circle doesn't see this and come after me, but I'm just not a fan. Okay, so if you see it out there, those one size catch all, just download this and never have to worry about it. Let your kids do whatever they want on the internet again. Too good to be true? Probably is, right? Okay, not really a fan of Circle. Okay, in essence of time, I'm going to jump through there. All right, let's talk about cellular services. Okay, so now you've got your home protected. You've got your smart screen on from Apple. You've got your Microsoft families on there. But guess what? You still have one little other area to look at. If your family is part of a family plan, and your kids have data on their account, well, then they could turn off the Wi-Fi, go around your router, and use the cellular data, right? So how do you address that? More and more providers are coming up with ways to handle it. AT&T just changed the name of it, but it's the same thing. It's called Smart Limits. I have a link for it in there. Verizon's got one called Smart Family. And then T-Mobile one has called Family Allowances, okay? You need to set these up. And they're getting free, or they're very negligible. They're going to add like $4 to your cell phone bill, okay? But what they're going to let you do is they're going to let you say, okay, when they're at home or during these hours, don't let them use data. Why do they need to be using data when they're at home? They should be using the Wi-Fi, then you can control it. When they aren't home, limit the data to just this. And some of them actually able to do that. There's also cool features in there where you can actually geofence your kid. This is fun. You can draw like around a map of where your kid is. If they go outside that, you get a text message. Okay, kind of neat. All right. Yeah. So it's again, there's links to look into all of those. But to reiterate, you've got to look at those three things, right? OpenDNS is what I really suggest you use. Use a program, like the Microsoft families, like the Apple Smart Screen, and then set up something on your cellular account, okay? Again, this is not going to just let you just go like this and bury your head in the sand for the next 5 years as your kid grows up. But what it's going to do is it's going to give you a little bit more visibility in what they're doing, and it's going to make it a little harder. And part of accountability is just making it a little harder for our kids to stumble, right? Okay. Final thoughts. Okay. Here's what I will tell you. I've given you a lot of reasons to be scared by the internet, okay? It's a medium. It's a way to present information. Some of the apps that I put up there, some of the things I talked about, they're used by churches, they're used by missionaries in third world countries where, like VPNs, guess who uses VPNs almost all the time? Missionary organizations in China and things of that nature, because they have to get information out and they don't want the Chinese government seeing it, okay? There's legit uses in our society for a lot of these things. So we can't, as Christians, bury our head in the sand, but we can't also just stomp our feet and say that we're going to block everything and we're going to lock our kids in a closet for the next 5 years. I'd love to, trust me. I'd love to turn off the internet. But the reality is we can't. We have to give our kids the ability to make wise decisions. And I just don't think at the ages of 13 or 14 that they're really capable of doing that. And so it's our job as parents to give them the tools necessary. You're not going to block them, right? The statistics are there. They're not going anywhere. They're going to get around it, right? We have a saying in IT when we talk about security and getting hacked as an organization. It's not if, it's when, right? So it's all about how you respond to that, and it's all about you do that. So have these discussions with your kids. Don't go home and go totalitarian and install these tools. When we installed them, we had a family meeting. We set everybody down. We said, we're doing this. And the immediate response, like every other kid, is, well, what did I do wrong? I'm not punishing you. Here's what I'm protecting you for. And I talked to my daughter about cyberbullying. She knows why she can't have an account, right? And we use the news as a tool to explain to her what's out there, right? Same thing with our kids, our younger boys. We explain to them, like, look, there's bad people out there that want to hurt you, right? Oh, why would you tell your 9 and 10-year-old that? Because it's true, right? And so it's all about giving them the tools that they need in order to be able to do that, and making sure that we protect our kids through that. So that's kind of my parting words to you before I go into whatever Q&A we have. And then the final thing, obviously, I kind of already talked about. I'll get off my soapbox about it, but your kids don't need privacy. The world wants you to believe that. The advertisers are trying to advertise to your kids, want you to believe that. Man, we as Christians need to stand our ground, and we are called to protect our children. And at the moment we let our kids subscribe to this, I have my own free will when it comes to what I do or what I say or where I go online and all those different things. And oh, that's Susie or Johnny's phone, and I just trust them. You might have the best kid in the world. I don't trust the kid next to him. All right? Okay, so just keep that in mind. With that being said, I am going to flip over to Q&A. If I don't get a chance to say it beforehand, there's my contact information, my email. You can tweet out to me, and you'll reach out to me if you have any questions. From the bottom of my heart, thank you for letting me come to your congregation. You guys don't know me from Adam, but we all are brothers and sisters in Christ. It's cool to come here and share this information with you guys. I hope you got something out of it, and I'm happy to answer any questions at this point. So thank you. Yeah.
The open home DNS one that you were talking about,
Yes.
does that automatically link into your router to attack to do the settings, or?
No, you'll actually have to log into your router and set it up.
Okay.
There is a website on the handout that has how to do it for the most common routers.
Okay.
Once you see how it is for most of the common routers, if you don't have a common one, the setting is still the same, so you can just kind of hunt around until you find it. And then if you run into any issues, Zane knows how to do this too. Right. So we can reach out to Zane, or you can reach out to me. I don't want you to think you can't, but between the two of us, we'll get you set up, right? Okay. And let me be clear. This is a passionate topic for me. Like, I can't be everybody's tech support 24/7, but please do not be afraid to email me. I'd rather help you and help you protect your kid than you think, well, I can't. And again, Zane's available too, because he told me he would be.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anything else? Yes, sir.
The Facebook family account, just a question. When we got, or no, not Facebook, I'm sorry.
The Apple
family.
Yep.
Yeah. When we got iPhones, we just set up one Apple account.
Yeah.
So that, and my son is 24 and he's still on the account. So whenever he downloads an app, I get it on my. Is it better to do it that way, or since I'm already set up, with just one account? Are we okay with one account?
I would not use one account. So what I would do is you can still do the Apple family. You're going to have him set up his own iCloud account, and then you're going to invite him to the family, and he'll get all of those apps back, right? And there's a setting in there, and there's a website on the handout on how to do that. But inviting him to the family so he gets all those apps back. If you have one account, then if you have kids that are that are younger that you want to control all that on and everything, you're not able to do that. But in your case, even if you have a 24-year-old son, quite honestly, that's actually a violation of Apple's terms of service. You should have separate accounts for every user. So you do want to split it up for a lot of different reasons. Will help you, because if you ever went in to get a new phone or to reset your phone or reset your backup, you could run into a problem too. Yeah. Yeah, you guys all need to have separate accounts, but you can still retain being able to share downloads. You just need to make sure you invite it. So when I did it for my kids, I used to do it the same way. Each one of my kids used my wife's Apple ID, and it was a pain. And then we went and we set them all up with their own account with this new feature, and it works out great. Yeah, no, you need to. And then the other thing is with the 10,000 pictures is you can set up the account, but then here's the cool thing. You can turn on storage sharing. So if you pay for extra storage, which you probably do with 10,000 pictures, that storage that you pay for will now be shared across all of the accounts. Okay? Yeah. Right. Yeah, exactly. Even the ones that you've already pre-downloaded. So again, you should have separate accounts if you don't already.
This is immaterial, really, but
Yeah.
my cousin his name is Sam Black. He's an executive with Covenant Eyes.
Oh, cool.
I don't know
Okay.
if you know him.
I do not. But it's a good thing I didn't say anything bad about it. Whew. It actually is great software. It's just, here's the thing, right? As these apps, as Apple and Microsoft start building this in, these companies have to stay ahead of the game with new features that other ones don't have. But Covenant Eyes has been around for a long time. Great organization. I would encourage you. Covenant Eyes to me, is a great tool if you are struggling with a pornography addiction and you want some accountability. It works well for families as well, but there's other apps out there as well that will work. So I won't say anything negative about it now, especially now that I know that. It actually is a great tool, all joking aside. Anything else? Guys, thank you so much. I'll be around for just a couple minutes before I head out, and then you have my email and contact information. There's stuff on the handouts, and you have a resident tech support here in your church. Thank you, Zane, for volunteering. All right. Thanks, guys.